The Proud Princess's Transformation. Chapter 1. The Golden Castle. Princess Isabella was born with a silver spoon in her mouth, or rather, a golden one. From the moment she opened her eyes to the world, everything around her sparkled. The castle where she lived stood tall and magnificent, its towers reaching toward the clouds like fingers trying to touch the sky. The walls were painted in cream and gold, and every window reflected the sunlight so brightly that travelers from far away could see it shining like a star. Inside that castle, life was soft. Too soft, perhaps. Isabella never knew what it meant to wait for anything. If she wanted water, someone brought it in a crystal glass. If she felt cold, a servant appeared with a velvet blanket. If her shoes felt uncomfortable, 3 maids rushed to find softer ones. She grew up believing the world existed to serve her. "Where is my breakfast?" she would call out from her bed, her voice sharp and impatient. A maid would hurry in, carrying a tray filled with fresh pastries, honey, and warm milk. But Isabella rarely smiled. She would glance at the food and wrinkle her nose. "This bread is too hard," she'd complain, pushing the plate away. The maid would bow her head. "I'm sorry, princess. I'll bring fresh ones immediately." Isabella would wave her hand dismissively, already bored. She didn't notice the sadness in the maid's eyes. She didn't see how the woman's hands trembled slightly as she picked up the tray. To Isabella, servants were like furniture, necessary, but invisible. The king and queen loved their daughter deeply, but they worried. They watched as she grew more demanding each day. They heard how she spoke to the staff, how she threw tantrums when things didn't go exactly her way, how she refused to share her toys with visiting children. "Isabella," the queen said gently one afternoon, "you must learn kindness. These people who serve us are human beings, just like you." Isabella rolled her eyes. "But mother, they're servants. That's their job." The queen sighed, her heart heavy. She exchanged a glance with the king, who sat quietly in his throne, stroking his beard. They both knew something had to change, but they didn't know how to reach their daughter's heart. At the age of 10, Isabella had everything a child could dream of. She had a room filled with dolls from every corner of the kingdom. She had dresses in every color imaginable, each one more beautiful than the last. She had a white pony that she rode through the castle gardens, though she often grew bored after just a few minutes and demanded to be taken back inside. But Isabella had no friends. Other noble children were invited to the castle for parties and celebrations, but they never stayed long. They whispered to their parents that Isabella was mean, that she never shared, that she always wanted to be the center of attention. Slowly, the invitations stopped coming. The castle grew quieter. Isabella didn't seem to notice. Or perhaps she did, but she told herself she didn't care. She convinced herself that being alone was better than being with children who didn't understand her importance. One particular day changed everything. It was a bright spring morning. The birds sang sweetly outside Isabella's window, and the air smelled of blooming roses. Isabella woke up in a terrible mood. She had dreamed that another girl was wearing a crown more beautiful than hers, and it made her furious. "Maria!" she shouted for her favorite maid, the one who had served the royal family for 20 years. Maria entered quietly, her gray hair neatly tucked under her cap. "Yes, princess. I want the blue dress, the one with the silver ribbons." Maria hesitated. "My dear, that dress is being cleaned. Perhaps the pink one with—" "I said the blue one." Isabella stamped her foot. "Are you deaf?" Maria's face fell. For years, she had cared for this child, had sung her lullabies, had stayed up late sewing her torn dolls. And yet, Isabella spoke to her as if she were nothing. "I'll fetch it right away, princess," Maria said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. But this time something was different. This time someone was watching. Hidden in the corner of the room, invisible to human eyes, stood an old woman wrapped in a cloak that shimmered like moonlight. She was the Mirror Guardian, a magical being who watched over the kingdom's royal family. For months, she had observed Isabella's behavior, waiting, hoping the child would change on her own. But kindness cannot be learned from comfort alone. The guardian raised her hand. and her fingers glowed with a soft, silver light. She whispered words ancient and powerful, words that had not been spoken in 100 years. Let the proud see through humble eyes. Let the heart that commands learn to serve. Only then shall the mirror reveal the truth within. The spell was cast. Isabella felt nothing at first. She continued her day as usual, complaining about her breakfast, ignoring her tutors, and speaking rudely to anyone who crossed her path. But that night, as she stood before her grand mirror to admire herself before bed, something strange happened. The mirror began to shimmer. Isabella stepped closer, confused. Her reflection seemed to blur, like water disturbed by a stone. Colors swirled: gold, silver, blue, and green, all mixing together in a dizzying dance. What's happening? Isabella reached out to touch the glass. The moment her fingers made contact, the world spun. Light exploded around her. She felt herself falling, tumbling through space and time, through clouds and stars, until finally, thud, she landed on something hard. Not her soft carpet, but cold, dirt ground. Isabella opened her eyes slowly. Above her, instead of her painted ceiling with golden angels, she saw a simple wooden roof. The smell was different too. No perfume, no fresh flowers. Instead, she smelled bread baking, animals, and earth. She sat up quickly, her heart pounding. Where was she? The room was tiny. A small bed with a rough blanket. A wooden table. One chair. One window with no glass, just shutters. And her clothes, her beautiful silk nightgown, was gone. Instead, she wore a simple brown dress, patched in several places. No, Isabella whispered, her voice shaking. No, no, no. This is a dream. This has to be a dream. But it wasn't. The door creaked open, and a woman entered. She was round and cheerful, with flour dusting her apron and kindness in her eyes. Oh, good, you're awake, the woman said warmly. Come now, child. There's work to be done. The chickens won't feed themselves. Isabella stared at her in shock. Chickens? I'm a princess. I don't feed chickens. The woman laughed, thinking it was a joke. Princess, she says. What an imagination. Come along now, before the sun gets too high. Isabella's mouth opened and closed like a fish. She wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, to call for her parents. But something told her that wouldn't help. The mirror guardian spell had worked. Isabella was no longer in her castle. She was no longer treated like royalty. She was just another village girl. And her transformation was about to begin. Chapter 2. The Village Morning. Isabella stumbled out of the small cottage, her eyes wide with disbelief. This had to be a nightmare. Any moment now, she would wake up in her soft bed, surrounded by silk pillows, with Maria bringing her breakfast on a golden tray. But the morning sun was real. The dirt beneath her bare feet was real. And the chickens clucking loudly in the yard were definitely real. There you go, dear. The kind woman, who had introduced herself as Martha, handed Isabella a basket. Just scatter the feed like this, and they'll come running. Isabella held the basket as if it were filled with snakes. I don't know how. Martha chuckled. Oh, you're still half asleep, aren't you? Just toss it on the ground, sweetheart. They know what to do. With trembling hands, Isabella reached into the basket. The grain felt rough and strange. At the castle, she had never touched anything like this. She threw a handful, and immediately, a dozen chickens rushed toward her, their wings flapping, their beaks pecking frantically at the ground. Isabella screamed and jumped back. They're attacking me. Martha laughed so hard she had to wipe tears from her eyes. Attacking? Lord bless you, child. They're just hungry. You're doing fine. But Isabella didn't feel fine. She felt terrified, confused, and angry. This wasn't her life. This couldn't be her life. After the chickens were fed, Martha led her inside. The cottage was warm from the fire burning in the hearth. The smell of fresh bread filled the air, and despite everything, Isabella's stomach growled. Sit, sit, Martha said, placing a simple wooden bowl in front of her. Eat up. You'll need your strength today. Isabella looked down at the bowl. Porridge. Plain, simple porridge with a drizzle of honey. At the castle, she would have turned her nose up at such a basic meal. But now, after everything that had happened, she was too shocked to complain. She took a small bite. It was warm. It was sweet. And it was good. "Thank you," she whispered, the word feeling strange on her tongue. Martha beamed. "You're welcome, dear. It's nice to have help around here. Since my son went to work in the city, it's been just me. Having you here is a blessing." Isabella's mind raced. Help? Blessing? This woman thought she was here to work? To actually do chores? Before she could protest, Martha was already moving. "After breakfast, we'll need to wash the clothes down by the river. Then there's the garden to tend, and—" "Wait!" Isabella interrupted, her voice rising. "I can't do all that. I'm not a servant." Martha paused, turning to look at her with gentle eyes. "Servant? Oh, honey, you're not a servant. You're family. We all work together here. That's how life goes. Family. Work together." These were concepts Isabella had heard before, but never truly understood. At the castle, family meant being served. Work meant watching others do things for you. "I don't know how to wash clothes," Isabella admitted quietly, her cheeks burning with shame. Martha's expression softened. "Well, that's all right. Everyone learns. I'll teach you." And she did. That morning, Isabella learned what real work felt like. She learned how to carry water from the well, her arms aching after just 2 buckets. She learned how to scrub clothes against the washing stones by the river, her knuckles turning red and sore. She learned how to hang wet fabric on the line, standing on her tiptoes because she wasn't quite tall enough. Everything hurt. Everything was hard. And no one was there to do it for her. By midday, Isabella collapsed on the grass near the river, breathing heavily. Sweat dripped down her forehead. Her hands had small blisters forming. Her feet were dirty and scratched. "I can't do this," she whispered to herself, tears stinging her eyes. "I want to go home." A voice startled her. "First time doing laundry?" Isabella looked up to see a girl about her age, maybe 11 or 12, with dark curly hair and bright, curious eyes. She was carrying her own basket of wet clothes. Yes," Isabella admitted. The girl grinned and sat down beside her. "I remember my first time. I cried for an hour. My mama had to finish it for me." She stuck out her hand. "I'm Grace." Isabella hesitated, then shook it weakly. "I'm Isabella. Pretty name. You're staying with Miss Martha, right? I heard you arrived last night." Yes, but I'm not supposed to be here. There's been a mistake." Grace tilted her head, studying her. "A mistake? What do you mean?" Isabella wanted to tell her everything. About the castle, about being a princess, about the magic mirror. But something stopped her. The words sounded crazy even in her own mind. "Nothing," she said finally. "Never mind." Grace shrugged. "Well, if you ever need help, just ask. That's what neighbors do." She stood up, brushing dirt from her dress. "Oh, and a tip. When you're scrubbing, use your whole arm, not just your wrist. It's easier that way." "Thank you," Isabella said. And this time, she meant it. As Grace walked away, Isabella sat there, processing everything. At the castle, she had never needed to ask for help. She had never needed to learn anything practical. She had never needed to say thank you and truly feel it. That evening, Martha prepared a simple dinner, vegetable soup and bread. Isabella was so exhausted that she barely spoke. Her whole body ached in ways she didn't know were possible. "You did well today," Martha said kindly, patting her hand. "I know it's hard when you're not used to it, but you'll get stronger. And you know what? I'm proud of you for trying." Proud of her for doing something as simple as washing clothes. Isabella felt a strange warmth in her chest. It wasn't the same as being praised for her beauty or her expensive dresses. This felt different, real. That night, as she lay on the small, hard bed, Isabella stared at the ceiling. Her hands throbbed, her muscles screamed, but her mind was quiet for the first time in years. She thought about Maria, her maid back at the castle. How many times had Maria's hands looked red and sore? How many times had she worked all day without a single thank you? Isabella's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered into the darkness. "I'm so sorry." But sorry wasn't enough. Words weren't enough. She would have to change. Really change. And somewhere far away, in the castle's highest tower, the mirror guardian smiled softly. The spell was working exactly as it should. Chapter 3. Lessons in Humility. Days turned into weeks, and Isabella slowly learned what it meant to live without privilege. Every morning began before sunrise. The rooster's crow became her alarm clock, harsh and unforgiving. At the castle, she used to sleep until late morning, waking only when sunlight streamed through her curtains and Maria gently called her name. Here, there was no gentleness. There was only work. "Up, up," Martha would call cheerfully, already dressed and moving about the kitchen. "The bread won't bake itself." Isabella discovered that baking bread was harder than it looked. The first time she tried to knead dough, it stuck to her fingers in clumps. "You're being too gentle," Martha instructed, demonstrating with strong, practiced hands. "Push down hard, fold it over, push again. Give it your strength." Isabella tried again, pressing with all her might. Her arms trembled. Sweat beaded on her forehead. But slowly, the dough began to come together. "There. See? You're getting it." Martha beamed. That small praise made Isabella's heart flutter in a way jewels and compliments never had. The village was small, maybe 50 families in total. Everyone knew everyone, and everyone worked. Isabella saw children younger than her, carrying water, tending gardens, helping their parents. No one complained. No one demanded servants. One afternoon, while Isabella was struggling to carry firewood back to Martha's cottage, she saw Grace again. The girl was helping her elderly neighbor repair a fence. "Need a hand?" Grace called out, wiping sweat from her brow. Yes, please," Isabella admitted, her arms aching. Grace jogged over and easily lifted half the wood. "Teamwork makes everything easier." As they walked together, Isabella asked quietly, "Don't you ever get tired of working all the time?" Grace thought for a moment. "Sure, sometimes. But that's just life, isn't it? Everyone contributes. If I don't help, who will? And besides," she grinned, "when we all work together, we get to rest together too. Tomorrow is the village festival. There'll be music and dancing and food." Festival. Isabella's eyes widened. At the castle, festivals were grand affairs with orchestras and formal gowns. She couldn't imagine what a village festival would be like. "You'll love it." Grace squeezed her arm excitedly. "I'll save you a seat next to me." That night, Isabella lay in bed thinking about friendship. At the castle, she had never had a real friend. Children came to play because their parents told them to, because it was expected, because she was royalty. But Grace chose to be kind to her. Grace helped her without expecting anything in return. It was a strange, wonderful feeling. The next day, the village square transformed. Colorful banners hung from the trees. Tables were set up with simple but delicious-looking food: pies, roasted corn, fresh fruit. A group of men tuned their instruments while children ran around laughing and playing. Isabella wore the same patched brown dress she wore every day. Her hair was tied back simply with a piece of ribbon Martha had given her. No jewels, no silk, no crown. And yet, when Grace waved at her from across the square, Isabella felt more special than she ever had in her finest gown. "Come on." Grace pulled her into a circle of children who were learning a traditional dance. Isabella stumbled at first, her feet clumsy and uncertain. She had learned formal ballroom dances at the castle, but this was different: wild, free, full of laughter. "Left foot, then right. Spin around," the children sang. Isabella tried to follow, and when she messed up, everyone just laughed. Not at her, but with her. They helped her learn. They cheered when she finally got it right. She was spinning, laughing, breathless, when something caught her eye. An old woman sat alone at the edge of the square. Her clothes were worn, her face wrinkled with age. A wooden cane rested against her chair. No one seemed to notice her. Isabella's feet slowed. She stopped dancing. "What's wrong?" Grace asked, following her gaze. "Who is that?" "Oh, that's old Maggie. She lives alone at the edge of the village. She doesn't have any family left." "She's all alone? At the festival?" Grace shrugged sadly. "She doesn't talk much anymore. People have tried to include her, but she usually just wants to sit quietly." Isabella felt something stir in her chest, a feeling she couldn't quite name. Without thinking, she walked over to the old woman. "Hello," Isabella said softly. The woman looked up, her eyes cloudy but kind. "Hello, child. Would you like some food? I could bring you a plate." The old woman's face softened. "That's very kind of you, dear, but I can manage." "I know you can," Isabella said quickly, "but I'd like to help, if that's okay." For a long moment, the woman just looked at her. Then slowly she smiled. "All right then. Thank you." Isabella brought her food, then sat beside her, talking quietly while the music played. She learned that Maggie had once been a seamstress, that she had 3 children who moved away to find work, that she missed them but understood they had their own lives. "You're a good listener," Maggie said, patting Isabella's hand. "That's a rare gift." At the castle, Isabella had never listened to anyone. She had only talked, complained, demanded. But now listening felt important, felt meaningful. As the sun set and the festival wound down, Martha found Isabella helping to clean up the square. "Look at you," Martha said warmly. "A few weeks ago, you didn't know how to feed chickens. Now you're helping the whole village." Isabella felt her cheeks flush with pride. Real pride. Not the arrogant kind she used to feel, but something deeper, warmer. That night, as she walked back to the cottage with Martha, Isabella asked, "Why is everyone so kind here, even though no one has much?" Martha was quiet for a moment, then said, "Because kindness doesn't cost anything, dear, and it's worth everything." Those words settled into Isabella's heart like seeds in soil. She was changing. Slowly, day by day, she was becoming someone different, someone better. But she still didn't know how to get home, or if she even wanted to, anymore. Chapter 4. The Mirror's Truth. 1 month had passed since Isabella arrived in the village. Her hands, once soft and delicate, now bore the marks of honest work. Small calluses, tiny scars from thorns in the garden, the strength that comes from carrying water and kneading bread. Her skin had darkened slightly from working under the sun, and her hair, which used to be brushed 100 times each night by servants, now hung in a simple braid she had learned to weave herself. She barely recognized herself, and yet she had never felt more alive. One evening, after a particularly long day of helping Martha preserve vegetables for winter, Isabella sat by the window watching the sunset. The sky burned orange and pink, painting the village in warm light. Children's laughter echoed from the street below. Someone was playing a flute, the melody sweet and melancholy. "You've been quiet tonight," Martha observed, sitting down beside her with her knitting. "I was just thinking," Isabella said softly, "about home. Do you miss it?" Isabella thought carefully. Did she? She missed her parents, yes. She missed the comfort, the safety. But did she miss the person she used to be? "I don't know," she answered honestly. "I'm different now." Martha smiled knowingly. Change isn't always comfortable, but it's often necessary. That night, Isabella dreamed of the castle. But it wasn't a happy dream. She saw herself as she used to be, shouting at Maria, throwing tantrums, treating people like objects. She saw the hurt in their eyes, hurt she had never noticed before. In the dream, she tried to apologize, but no words came out. She woke with tears on her face. The next morning, something unusual happened. A traveling merchant came to the village, his cart full of goods from distant cities. Everyone gathered in the square to see what he had brought. Fabrics, spices, tools, trinkets. Isabella stood at the edge of the crowd, not particularly interested. She had learned that things didn't bring happiness. But then she saw it. A mirror. Not just any mirror, but one with an ornate silver frame that looked exactly like the one in her bedroom at the castle. Her heart stopped. Before she could think, her feet were moving. She pushed through the crowd, drawn to it like a moth to flame. "Interested in the mirror, young lady?" the merchant asked. "It's a fine piece. Came from a grand estate up north." Isabella's hand trembled as she reached out. The moment her fingers touched the glass, the world shifted. Everything went white. When the light faded, Isabella found herself standing in a familiar room. Her castle bedroom. But something was wrong. It looked the same, yet different. Dusty, quiet, empty. "Hello?" she called out. A figure emerged from the shadows. It was the mirror guardian, her silver cloak shimmering like starlight. "Who are you?" Isabella gasped. "I am the one who gave you a gift," the guardian said, her voice like wind through trees. "The gift of truth. You did this to me? You took me away from my home." "No, child. I gave you a chance to see yourself clearly. You chose what happened next." Isabella's mind raced. "I want to go back. To the castle. To my parents." "And you can," the guardian said simply. "But first, tell me, what have you learned?" Isabella opened her mouth, then closed it. What had she learned? Where would she even begin? "I learned that." She paused, emotions welling up inside her. "I learned that I was cruel. I was selfish. I hurt people who cared for me, and I didn't even notice." The guardian listened silently. "I learned that work isn't punishment. It's purpose. Every time I bake bread or help someone, I feel useful, important. Not because of my title, but because of what I do." Her voice grew stronger. "I learned that kindness is a choice. Martha could have been mean to me. Grace could have ignored me. But they chose to be kind. And that choice changed everything." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I learned that I don't want to be the person I was. I want to be better. I want to deserve the love people give me." The guardian stepped closer, her ancient eyes soft with compassion. "And if you return to the castle, will you remember these lessons?" "Yes," Isabella said firmly. "I promise. I'll remember every single day." The guardian raised her hand, and the mirror between them began to glow. "Then it's time." "Wait," Isabella cried out. "What about Martha? And Grace? And everyone in the village? I can't just disappear." "They will remember you fondly," the guardian said, "and you will carry them in your heart. That is the nature of transformation. We take pieces of everyone who touches us." The light grew brighter, wrapping around Isabella like a warm embrace. She closed her eyes, feeling herself lifted, carried through space and time once more. When she opened them, she was standing in her castle bedroom, the real one. Early morning light streamed through the windows. Everything was exactly as she remembered. The silk curtains, the golden furniture, the soft carpet beneath her feet. And in front of her stood Maria, the maid, holding a breakfast tray. Maria's eyes widened. "Princess? You're awake early." Isabella looked at her, really looked at her. She saw the gray in Maria's hair, the tired lines around her eyes, the gentle smile that had always been there, even when Isabella didn't deserve it. Without a word, Isabella rushed forward and hugged her. Maria nearly dropped the tray in shock. "Princess? What?" "I'm sorry," Isabella whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry for how I treated you. You've been nothing but kind to me, and I was horrible." Maria's eyes filled with tears. She set the tray down carefully and hugged the child back. "Oh, my dear girl, where did all this come from?" "I learned," Isabella said simply. "I learned what really matters." From that day forward, everything changed. Isabella woke up early and helped the servants. She learned their names, their stories, their dreams. She said please and thank you until it became natural. She treated everyone with dignity and respect. Her parents watched in amazement. "What happened to our daughter?" the queen whispered to the king one evening. "I don't know," the king replied, smiling, "but I like who she's become." Isabella started a new tradition. Every week, She would spend a day working alongside the castle staff, helping in the kitchens, the gardens, the laundry. She wanted to understand their lives, their struggles, their joys. The servants, suspicious at first, slowly began to trust her. They saw that her change was real, lasting. One afternoon, Isabella found Maria in the sewing room, mending a torn dress. "May I help?" Isabella asked. Maria smiled, handing her a needle and thread. "I'd like that." As they worked side by side in comfortable silence, Isabella thought about the village, about Martha and Grace, about everything she had learned. The magic had taken her away and brought her back, but the real magic was what happened in between. She had found humility. She had found purpose. She had found herself, and that was worth more than all the gold in the kingdom. Chapter 5. Full Circle. Years passed. Isabella grew into a young woman known throughout the land not for her beauty or wealth, but for her kindness and wisdom. Visitors to the castle remarked on how different she was from other royalty, how she spoke to everyone as equals, how she worked alongside her people, how she truly listened when someone spoke. On her 16th birthday, instead of a grand ball, Isabella asked for something different. "I want to visit the village where I learned to be myself," she told her parents. The king and queen had heard pieces of Isabella's story, about a dream, about a journey, about transformation. They didn't fully understand, but they trusted their daughter. So Isabella traveled, accompanied only by Maria, whom she now considered a dear friend rather than a servant. When they arrived at the small village, Isabella's heart raced. Would it still be there? Would anyone remember? The village looked exactly as she remembered. The same cottages, the same well, the same square where the festival had been held. But something was different. The people looked more prosperous, healthier, happier. An old woman approached, leaning on a cane. Isabella's breath caught. "Maggie!" The woman squinted, then her face broke into a smile. "Isabella? Is it really you?" They embraced, and Isabella felt tears streaming down her face. "You remember me?" "Of course. How could I forget the kind girl who sat with an old woman when everyone else was dancing? I thought it might have been erased. Magic can be strange." Maggie chuckled. "Magic? Perhaps. But kindness is its own kind of magic, and that always leaves a mark." Martha's cottage still stood at the edge of the village. Isabella knocked on the door, her heart pounding. An older Martha answered, her hair whiter now but her smile just as warm. "Oh, my stars!" Martha gasped. "Look at you, all grown up and more beautiful than ever." They sat together drinking tea, and Isabella learned what had happened after she left. Martha had woken one morning to find Isabella gone, with only a note saying she had to return home. At first, Martha had been worried, but then strange blessings began to appear. Her garden grew more abundantly, her health improved, opportunities arose. "It was like you left a piece of light behind," Martha said softly. "You gave me so much more," Isabella replied. "You taught me what really matters." Grace arrived later, now a young woman herself, married to a kind farmer and expecting her first child. "Isabella," Grace squealed, embracing her. "I knew you were special. I just knew it." They laughed and cried and shared stories late into the evening. Before leaving, Isabella made a promise. She would use her position as princess to help villages like this one. She would ensure that kindness and hard work were valued as much as wealth and title. She would never forget where she came from, both the castle and the cottage. Back at the palace, Isabella implemented changes. She created programs to support working families. She established schools where children from all backgrounds could learn. She treated every person she met with respect and dignity. One day, while walking through the castle gardens, Isabella stopped at a fountain. The water shimmered in the sunlight, creating rainbows. She saw her reflection and smiled. The mirror guardian appeared beside her, visible only to Isabella. "You've done well," the guardian said quietly. "Thank you," Isabella replied, "for giving me the chance to change." "I gave you nothing but a mirror," the guardian corrected. "You did the changing yourself." "Will I ever forget?" Isabella asked. Will I ever become that spoiled child again? The guardian smiled. We all have the capacity for both kindness and cruelty. The difference is in what we choose every single day. You've learned to choose wisely. As the guardian faded away, Isabella made a silent vow. Every day, she would remember the girl who fed chickens, who baked bread, who learned that true worth comes from how we treat others. She would remember Martha's wisdom, Grace's friendship, Maggie's gratitude. She would remember that a princess is not defined by her crown, but by her character. And she would spend the rest of her life proving that the greatest magic of all is the transformation that happens when a proud heart learns to love. The sun set over the kingdom, painting everything in gold and pink. Isabella stood tall, no longer the spoiled child who demanded everything, but a young woman who understood that the greatest privilege is the opportunity to serve others. Her story spread far and wide. Parents told it to their children. Teachers shared it in schools. And somewhere, in a small village, an old woman named Martha smiled, knowing that the girl she had taken in had become exactly who she was meant to be. Not perfect, not flawless, but real, kind, and true. And that was the most beautiful ending of all. The end.